Kimchi Day celebrated here in Korea and in Argentina, as well as a number of American states and a British town. Now, this is according to the World Kimchi Research Institute. With more on the celebrations of this local comfort food on Press Perspective today. Hello and welcome to Press Perspective. I'm Min Sunhee. It's Friday, November 22nd, which is also Kimchi Day here in South Korea. And for more on the celebration of this day and its cultural significance, I have Andrew Salmon, the Asia editor for the Washington Times, live on the line. Andrew, welcome back.
Sunny, hi. Thanks. Sorry, apologies for not making it to the studio today.
Right, but at least we got you online. It's okay. And I also have
deepest, darkest Gangnam.
Right. I also have writer Colin Marshall with us. Colin, it's good to see you here again.
Good to see you again, and happy World Kimchi Day.
Right. Andrew, so as I mentioned in the clip at the start of this show, beyond Korea, Argentina and a couple of states in the US, as well as a British town, I understand, celebrate Kimchi Day. What do you believe, Andrew, are the broader implications of this reality?
I've got another apology. Not only am I not in the studio, but, given that we're watching, North Korean troops now fighting in a war in Europe, somehow the news of World Kimchi Day escaped my radar. So speaking very much off the top of my head, I'd say the ramifications, the implications of this are broadly the same as the ramifications of World Yogurt Day or World Sauerkraut Day, which is to say, possibly not very wide. I mean, the thing is that these are well-known, well-loved foods globally now. I think consumers know what they are, and I don't think people are going to say, oh, it's World Kimchi Day, I better have some kimchi. This is a foodstuff that's been known globally for probably more than a decade. So I would say kimchi's status as a global foodstuff is firm. It's safe and probably doesn't need a World Kimchi Day to promote it.
Right. And Andrew, before we delve further into what you just said, Colin, do you suppose the celebration of a food like Kimchi Day is similar perhaps to Korea's celebration of Pasta Day and Pizza Day?
Yes, there are so many international food days. Each foodstuff has its day, or we're getting there anyway. Soon every food will have its day. But I mean, it happens so often. I wake up in the morning, I pull up social media, and it's International Pancake Day. It's International Donut Day, or my wife tells me that it is one of those days. And I think, what am I supposed to do about that exactly? I mean, maybe I'll go enjoy the food, maybe not. But in Korea, every day is Kimchi Day. Almost every day is Kimchi Day for me. I mean, I eat it almost every day. And it brings to mind an advertisement I saw in the subway a while ago, which was for a K-Kimchi festival. It was called a K-Kimchi festival, and I thought, that's funny. Like, what would non-K kimchi be? Kimchi is the emblematic food or the emblematic thing of Korea. But then I thought, maybe I want to see what non-Korean kimchi is like. What is German kimchi? What would English kimchi be like? So maybe Kimchi Day, World Kimchi Day, is less something to be celebrated in Korea, where, as I say, it's always Kimchi Day, than something to be celebrated elsewhere, like Argentine kimchi. I kind of want to try it. I mean, you mentioned Argentina, but this is a way for the rest of the world to do their own thing, I suppose, with kimchi. But here, yes, as Andy said, the status is pretty much settled. Kimchi is in its place firmly in the cultural firmament.
Right, Andrew. So as you mentioned, and as Colin just said, global interest in Korea's kimchi, it has been growing and it has a secure place in the world. That being said, how much, Andrew, do you suppose does the world seem to know about this Korean staple, about this Korean banchan?
Probably as much as any, person wants to know. The information is freely available in global democracies. But just to give you a personal example, I was in the UK 2 weeks ago, and Korean food is everywhere. I literally went to a small town not far from Kingston on Thames, which is where the Korean ambassador lives. And in this town, not only were there a couple of restaurants serving Korean food, there was literally a Korean supermarket. there wasn't an Italian supermarket or a Japanese supermarket, but there was a Korean supermarket. And as far as I could tell, looking in, everybody in there was sort of white Brits, and even the people serving were white Brits. There wasn't a Korean in sight. So clearly, you know, the many aspects of Korean culture, including the cuisine, ergo kimchi, have been very, very widely accepted, widely disseminated, at least in my country. And I think this is probably true across Asia and across most of the West, you know, North America and Western Europe. So however much you want to know about kimchi, there are books, there are websites available. You can try it in restaurants, you can buy it in supermarkets. You know, for kimchi, it's game on.
Andrew, this is an impromptu question. You talked about trying kimchi in different parts of the world. What was your initial response to kimchi?
When I first came to Korea, and I won't say how long ago that was, I think it was the mid-Shilla dynasty, I tried it. I'd only read about it because in those days, Korean food was not international. Korean culture wasn't widely dispersed. It took me a while to get used to it, to be perfectly honest. And a few years ago, when I was writing about the promotion of Korean food, my suggestion was that probably the best Korean condiment or ingredient to promote would be jang, these fermented pastes, which are probably more accessible to global taste. Kimchi, I think, is something you grow up with. It's an acquired taste, but that's just my experience. Of course, many people, they taste it and it's love at first sight.
Right. Colin, kimchi in recent years, it's been taking on new and bold forms. I mean, it's being blended into Italian pasta or French pastry, and even in cocktails, I understand. Now, some welcome this blending of kimchi into different cuisines, and others do not. What is your take on this?
Kimchi has become a hip ingredient. That's true. And it's not the first Korean ingredient to have that happen. Gochujang as well has been in the culture in the US. I mean, the New York Times, I often reference this, but the New York Times published a recipe for gochujang caramel cookies a while ago. And every Korean I tell about that can't believe it, but it's plausible to me. That's the kind of thing Americans would come up with when they're given this, you know, traditional yet also fresh and exciting to them type of ingredient. But you look at the currently popular kimchi fusion dishes out there, and the work of a Los Angeles Korean-American chef named Roy Choi comes up. And I have fond memories of going to Roy Choi's food trucks when I lived in Los Angeles myself, in Koreatown, as it happens, in the early 2010s. And the trucks were called Kogi, K-O-G-I, and they just went around town, different neighborhoods all the time. You had to find them, follow them on social media, but you go to the trucks and you could get kimchi tacos, kimchi burritos, formerly Mexican or Mexican-American food, but involving Korean ingredients. It could be bulgogi as well. It could be different Korean flavors, but kimchi was the emblematic ingredient. And it brought back good memories to think of just how much I enjoyed seeking out Roy Choi's trucks and trying these fusion tacos, these fusion burritos. I mean, I also enjoy traditional Mexican food trucks, but you know, I also liked Korean food already at that time. So I think it got a lot of people really excited. And some of them used that as their entree, as it were, into real Korean food, real uses of kimchi. But I think it's also, I mean, there's nothing invalid about making a kimchi taco, nothing culturally wrong, to my mind anyway, but not everybody agrees.
Right, and speaking about not everybody agreeing, Andrew, we actually touched upon this dilemma of tailoring local flavors to better suit foreign tastes last week as well. And I'd like your thoughts on this. Where do you stand on the idea of tailoring traditional local flavors to better suit the international taste or the international audience?
Well, I mean, my stand on this is that a man who lives in a democracy where we have rights and freedoms. I mean, if you're a chef, you're welcome to do anything you like with any ingredient. But this question of, do you tailor it to local tastes or do you go for the authentic Korean-style taste is kind of moot in the sense that Korean food is now so widely dispersed that it's not an either-or choice. I'm sure in most major capitals now, you can go to an authentic, traditional Korean-style restaurant, or you can go to, say, a pub in London where they're going to serve what they call Korean chicken, which is chicken basted in gochujang. So again, to me, it's a non-issue, and it's not an either-or choice. We can have both.
Right. Meanwhile, moving beyond kimchi, Colin, one local media recently took issue with Korea's esports industry losing the opportunity to set the international standardization of the game, esport itself, to China, despite being the first to actually license professional players back in the year 2000. Many here in the country, of course, believe that esports, Korea is the birthplace of esports. What are your thoughts regarding conflicts over claims to cultural practices and so forth?
I realized when I thought about it, that is something that people associate with Korea, even abroad. In the US, if someone knows something about Korea beyond kimchi, they might know that Korea excels, or Koreans excel at esports, computer games. For decades we've known this, that they're big StarCraft players, for instance, or other games as well, but that the training is rigorous and the attainments are very high, typically in these leagues. Now, the issue here, or what seems to be the controversy, is that China had a set of specifications for international esports rules. They put them in, that was approved. It wasn't Korea's rules, it was rules China made. And in theory, if one country makes the rules, perhaps they will make those rules in a way amenable to their own players. Maybe if you make the rules, you'll do better because you can gear the rules toward yourself. Now, whether or not that will happen, I'm not sure, but the question that comes to mind is, why wasn't Korea first? Why didn't Korea write up some rules and submit them? What happened there? If Korea truly was first, if this is the cradle of esports, why weren't they right on getting the international regulations, if not made in Korea's favor, then at least why weren't they the ones to hammer it down first because they were earliest with the culture of esports? That's an unanswered question to me about this whole controversy.
Right, and staying with the controversies between South Korea and China, Andrew, a while back there was much conflict between Korea and China over kimchi. I'm sure you're aware. Could you give us some background information regarding that particular conflict? And again, how do you respond to such disputes, Andrew?
It's not just about kimchi. You know, some years back there were these vast online flame wars between Chinese netizens and Korean netizens about traditional Korean clothing. Was it from the Ming dynasty, or was it Korean? Is kimchi a copy of a Chinese pickled vegetable, or is a standalone, you know, all Korean product? My understanding is that while, you know, China continues to press these claims globally, young Korean people have sort of backed off. And I think that's actually a very, very positive development. China, let's be clear on this, is not winning any friends in the global, on the global scene or in the World Wide Web by having all these online sort of wolf warriors and these bots who are constantly promoting Chinese culture and Chinese nationalism and all things Chinese. I think much of the world is extremely irked and irritated by this. So by promoting these very nationalistic sort of hoo-ah narratives, China's actually not making friends, it's losing friends. So if young Koreans are no longer sort of going online and countering these claims, which suggest they've got better things to do with their times, I say more strength to their arms. Again, Korea as a polity, as a democracy, as an economy, is a firm part of the global landscape. Hallyu, you know, the Korean wave of cultural products, is known and consumed worldwide. Korea no longer needs to have these sort of nationalistic campaigns, and I think Korea's a better country for it.
Right. Colin, I understand the US had a similar food dispute with Italy. Could you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I don't know if it rose to the level of dispute, but it certainly was a point of great interest, and it got much circulated. This article in the Financial Times, where an Italian food expert, I believe it was, said or argued that carbonara, the pasta, is actually an American food because it was invented by Americans after World War II in Italy. So you have to think about what makes a food associated with one particular country. If it's invented in Italy, but by Americans, does that make it an American food? I'm not sure about that, because anybody who looks at carbonara is going to say that's an Italian food. It's made in the Italian tradition with ingredients, for the most part, that have been traditionally or had been traditionally used. But the stories of any particular dish are so culturally entangled sometimes, or just not what we expect them to be. I mean, here in Korea, people love tiramisu. It's a popular dessert, but the inventor of tiramisu actually died just this year. and the dish is newer than everybody thinks. It was invented in like 1969, 1970, and so people are surprised saying, oh, I thought this was a like generations and generations old traditional dish, but okay, it's Italian at least, but it's not what I thought it was. And, you know, foods often are. And because there's so much interchange with ingredients like peppers, hot peppers are from the Americas. Everyone knows that, but Korean food, what's the first thing everybody says about Korean food? It's spicy because of those peppers that didn't come from here. And I don't think it's any less Korean because it uses peppers after they were cultivated in the Americas and brought here. So people can get very tangled up about all this because food is such a powerful symbol of culture, symbol of nation, symbol of culture. And if, you know, somebody were to argue kimchi is actually Chinese, there'd be a big flame war. If it was the internet, there'd be a big, I mean, people wouldn't be happy, but at some point, foods are, like most foods have connections to some other place than the place they're usually eaten. And that's something that can be interesting. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be devastated by it. I don't think so.
Andrew, I'd like to go back to something you mentioned about Korean youth. Now, with regard to your opinion, there are some critics here in the country who have taken issue with what they believe is a lack of cultural awareness among the young, especially in light of the random claims over Korean culture made by some of its neighbors. What are your observations? Do you think the young here in Korea are unaware?
I don't think they're unaware at all. They grow up in Korean culture. They live in Korean culture. They go through Korean education. But, you know, again, Korea has developed so fast in the last half century. There are significant gaps between the generations. And so, you know, the parents and the grandparents of the young people today, people in their 20s and early 30s, they had vastly different life experiences. And they were, you know, growing up at a time when Korea was not known internationally, was not known globally. And so there was, you know, I find the Koreans of the older generation to be much more sort of fiercely nationalistic and much more promotional of Korea, whereas the young people today, they don't have to be that way because they've grown up in a country and in a world where Korea is widely known, is widely respected. And of course, you don't need these promotional campaigns anymore because the private sector has promoted Korea extremely effectively. And by private sector, I'm talking about be it a sports organization, Taekwondo now is a global sport, an Olympic sport, be it television, cinema, gaming, movies. This has all been done extremely effectively by the various sort of subsectors in the cultural space who've done this for profit, you know, within the global economy, been very, very successful about it, and didn't really need, so again, marketing campaigns or promotional campaigns. So I think, again, I think today's young Korean people are much more comfortable with their identity as Koreans and don't feel the need to push it in the way that perhaps Chinese today do. Chinese arguably is at same kind of development level of Korea 10 or 15 years ago.
Right. Colin, keeping in mind what Andrew's just said, do you suppose Korea's South power in recent years has positioned the country in a favorable leverage, perhaps, for greater interactions with its global partners in diverse fields?
Well, you've mentioned at the beginning of the segment Argentina, and recently an Argentine friend sent me a music video of a new group in Argentina called Caos, which means chaos, and it's a girl group, and it's K-pop, yet it's not in Korean, it's in Spanish, all the songs. All the members are Argentine women, but it's K-pop. Like this, the video, the music, the sound of it, the look, it was K-pop. And I'm thinking, oh, Korea definitely has what I would call a cultural empire going, or the beginnings of a cultural empire. Though, I mean, many Koreans hold it very dear about Korea that it is not an imperialistic country. And so I wonder, going forward, how well Korea will be able to manage or make use of the influence it now has beyond its borders. I mean, is this something that can be harnessed well, or is this something that may be just dispersed through hybridization? Maybe a little of both at once, I'm not sure. But other countries aspire to make things like Korea makes them, and that's a significant development.
Right. Andrew, do you suppose Korea could perhaps use its soft power with regard to the people in the K-pop industry, like our singers, perhaps to raise greater awareness about the more serious issues in the world with regard to wars in Ukraine and the war in the Middle East? Perhaps get BTS fans, etc., to raise awareness about how we should be doing our part to bring attention to such suffering?
To be honest, I mean, there's soft power and hard power, different sides of national power, and they operate in different spheres. I struggle to see what impact, K-pop is going to have on, say, the war in Ukraine, where there's a very significant issue, which is whether South Korea will directly arm Ukraine now that North Korean troops are actually fighting on the battlefield. To me, that's rather a different issue from, people enjoying and consuming Korean movies, Korean dramas. What happens in the West is that many people in entertainment in Hollywood take a strong political stance. We've seen this with the recent election. So that's one area where arguably national soft power can have an impact or not on national policy. But of course, in South Korea, where the celebrities are expected to be squeaky clean and to not cause any controversy, I suspect that is not happening and possibly isn't going to happen in the near future.
Right, Andrew. Well, we will be talking more about North Korea's presence in Ukraine next Monday. So hopefully, Andrew, you can watch us for that episode. Thank you so much for your thoughts on Kimchi Day. And Colin here in the studio, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you.
Right, well, that brings us to the end of this week's editions of Press Perspective. Happy Kimchi Day and do have a great weekend. And be sure to tune in same time next Monday.